All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to a special episode of the Deal in the Cards podcast. I'm Sandy, and we're joined here today by St. Louis sports legend Bernie Miklasz, and then
Oh,
also Andrew Wang, as always. So we've got a lot to break down. Cardinals are coming off of an incredibly frustrating series, but we'll get all that up next on Deal in the Cards. All right, guys. So we're just going to be honest here, and we're just going to start. The Cardinals are coming off of what I believe might be one of the worst series of the year. They just got swept in Toronto, just terrible all around. And a lot of the things, I know we were talking about this pre-show, Bernie, a lot of the things that we hate about this team just came out in this series. One of the big ones for me here was the Cardinals with runners in scoring position. 2 for 19 in the first game, 0 for 8 over the next two games to go 2 for 27 over the series. Just terrible. So, what did you guys see in this series, and why was it so frustrating for you guys?
well, you nailed it, Sandy, and it's good to be on with you. I don't even know how that's possible. I'm serious.
Horrible.
Where you go 2 for 27 in 3 games with runners in scoring position. How is that even possible? I mean, we understand. Listen, we've come to expect that they're really, really, really bad at this. And I've even, got in deep with the StatCast stuff because I'm trying to identify some problems that would explain it. And long story short, and they've done this all year, when they have runners in scoring position and the opportunities there, they take way too many called strikes and they swing it way too many pitches out of the zone. I mean, so if your habits are that bad at the plate, your plate discipline or pitch awareness or whatever you want to call it, you're going to be bad at runners hitting with runners in scoring position, and it's not always random. And I know that that's one thing in the sabermetric community or advanced metrics that it's like, well, if you have a bad offense, you're going to be bad at runners in scoring position. I agree with that principle, but they've taken it to a much deeper level because it seems like they take their worst at bats in those situations, and we're all tired of watching it. I'm just like so burned out on it. And I think this weekend, maybe more than any other series, Sandy, to your point,
Horrible.
This was like the absolute worst all year with the one thing that's driven us all kind of nuts, right?
It was just terrible. And what I don't understand, I see stuff like this so this comment from Cleveland Welsh here, bad approach. It doesn't change at all. But to your point, it's worse with runners in scoring position. And that's what I can't wrap my head around, right? I don't understand how when you've got guys on, it gets worse somehow. And it should get better. If you're doing the exact same thing, balls that are outs with nobody on, right? Like a ground ball to the right side, that scores a runner from third with runners in scoring position, and it counts as a sacrifice. So it doesn't count against your numbers. Right. Or a sac fly that's a free out with nobody on base. And somehow, so your numbers should trend up a little bit if everything is held constant. But they are worse. And that's what I just can't understand. I don't get it. And it feels like it's been this way for the better part of the last decade. You go back post 2015, it really feels like there have been years like 2022, they were solid. They had good stretches in 19 and 21, and those are seasons where they made the playoffs. They played well. But for the most part, the Cardinals just haven't executed in these big situations. And, we're a decade in the making of this. It's just so frustrating.
And here, if I may throw a question to you guys, the eternal question about this is like, how much of this is, it's not all on the batting coaches. And that's always the first thing everyone jumps on. And through the years, frankly, I have kind of become weary of that. However, some of the stuff I've looked at about their approach, I just have to wonder, like, what kind of messaging is there? What kind of teaching and instruction is there? And if it's there, if the coaches are doing what they should do, why don't the players get the message? But what do you guys think? I mean, I think it's a cop out to blame everything on the hitting coach. I really, really do, because I just think it's a talent issue, and I think players have to. Hey, no matter what your job is, you got to step up and get your job done. But I do think there's like a weird mix of things that have led to this. What do you think?
Yeah, I'll jump in. I think it's not entirely smart to just blame the hitting coaches, because you don't really know what's going on behind the scenes. Like, I'm not in the clubhouse. I'm not seeing what the hitting coaches are pouring into the guys. But at a certain point, you just have to hold the coaches accountable, right? Because this is a group that has 2 future Hall of Famers, Paul Goldschmidt and Nolan Arenado. They might be trending towards the end of their prime, but like they're still who they are. They still, like, the back of their baseball card still says what it says. And you have promising young talents like Nolan Gorman, Jordan Walker, Lars Nootbaar, Brendan Donovan. This is not the Chicago White Sox, right? This is not a team that has no talent on it and is just trying to lose essentially just to get a higher draft pick right now. Like the 2 for 27 batting average is a 0.74 batting average that they had this past weekend with runners in scoring position. And being the guy who always likes and advocates for two-way players, right? Let's go back to 2021, where the last year they had the pitchers batting in the National League. That's a lower batting average than Adam Wainwright, Kwon Yun Kim, Jack Flaherty, Carlos Martinez, John Lester, Johan Oviedo, Jake Woodford, and Dakota Hudson.
No, my goodness.
That's like 8 pitchers.
On our team.
2021.
On the Cardinals.
So
maybe they should have let a couple of the pitchers bat in these situations, right?
Right, like that's just unacceptable.
It would have sent a message. You know?
And
It is. How much of it do you think is, you know, they don't handle pressure well, and maybe the fact that this has been an issue all season long, and they are aware of it and they have heard about it, because every media platform you want, traditional stuff like we're doing, whatever, everyone's made a big deal about it, understandably and justifiably. Listen, man, having covered pro athletes for what seems to be about 1 million years now, they always say, well, we tune out the outside noise. No, they don't. That stuff seeps in, and I just wonder how much of it is this. It makes them even worse under pressure, and a almost complete lack of confidence. Now, there will be games here and there where they get big hits. You know, how much of it is just like it's in their head and they can't even function properly because it's in their head so bad. I got to think that's at least part of it.
It's the only explanation that makes sense to me at this point, because there's not a statistical way to explain this anymore. And it's the fact that it's your biggest and brightest stars in the biggest situations that can't get it done, right? It's the fact that Paul Goldschmidt, with runners in scoring position this year, you might as well just count on a double play or a strikeout, because that's all it's been. It's been horrible. Nolan Arenado has been terrible in big spots. Like, these are the guys you're relying on night in, night out, and it's just not happening. And so, yeah, I think it's got to be mental. And it's not like there's a track record for this. Andrew mentioned, these guys are future Hall of Famers in all likelihood. They've had great careers. And like their numbers are bad this year. Like, they're definitely down. Both of them have OPSs under 750, but they're not horrible, right? We're not talking about like replacement level hitters here. We're still talking about guys who are solid MLB hitters, and they're just not getting the job done. So, yeah, I have to think it's partly mental. And we've seen this whole team, especially last year, they showed a tendency to snowball, right? Like, the Cardinals got off to a poor start, and it felt like there's still talent here. They've got plenty of talent to win. The Central wasn't super strong, but you saw things kind of get away from them. And it feels like it happens like that this year too. If the Cardinals don't get off to a strong start in a given game, the game's over. Don't count on them to come back. Don't count on them to dig out. There's not resilience. So yeah, I think it is a lot of mental. I think that's the only explanation at this point that I haven't ruled out.
And I don't know. And the scary thing is, and I'm not trying to jump ahead here, because I'm sure we'll talk about it. The scary thing is, if they bring back the same cast, largely the same cast, let's say minus Goldie, okay, I'm not sure how it gets better next season. I mean, I would love to sit here, and I did a video of this in a YouTube channel, a couple weeks ago. I would love to sit here and say with confidence, well, it was a weird year for Walker. It was a weird year for Gorman. It was another injury marred year for Nootbaar. I'm confident all three of those guys will be better next year. I'm not. What would be the reason to be confident? And Arenado's going to be 34. I mean, the power is not going to increase. If anything, it's going to go down. Nootbaar can't stay healthy. Burleson is a platoon bat. I love Burleson, but he's also like really, really, really been on fumes down the stretch. I mean, he hasn't really been good since about the third week of July. And so I think we all love Mason Wynn, but like who else is there where you just say, okay, 2, 3, 4, those are the reasons why they'll be better next year offensively. I mean, I hate to be so down about this, but I also don't want to do the Mr. Sunshine when it's unjustified, right? It's just, I'm not into that. So anyway.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. I've said at times this is almost more frustrating than last season because there were at least bright spots where, like, Jordan Walker had a really nice year, 116 WRC plus as a rookie. You look at that and you say, this guy's 20 years old. We're excited about that. You look at Mason Wynn coming up, and even though it wasn't pretty, there was a lot to be excited about. There wasn't a long track record of being terrible here, right? And even other guys like Donovan still had an encouraging year. Nuke Bar was okay when he was healthy last year. These guys have all been worse. You're so right. Gorman, so much worse this year. And it's a multi-year trend in the wrong direction now, especially with like Brendan Donovan. His rookie year was awesome. 2022 is fantastic. Slightly worse last year, slightly worse this year. I mean, what does it look like next year? There's really no reason to be saying they're going to be better next year because they haven't shown us that.
And this, you bring up Donovan, and you're right. And I was looking, I love WRC plus, don't get me wrong, but just maybe I was like being lazy the other day. I just used OPS plus. He was like 22% above average as a rookie, and then it went down to, forgive me if I'm off a point or two, went down to like 14% above average last season. And then this year, the last time I checked, and actually this doesn't even count the last couple games, but he was about like 5 or 6% above average. So yeah, that's a pretty big drop. And when I look at Donovan, I think in some ways he represents the conundrum and the confusion that people like us have and fans have, because it's somewhere along the line when we saw the kind of at bats he took as a rookie and how he worked counts, and he really got himself in advantages, and he hit the ball to all fields. I would always just go nuts just looking at these great stats. Almost equal distribution, left field, straightaway, pull. And someone told him, or maybe he told himself, dude, you can hit for a lot of power. You got to get that swing going, and you modify your swing. You got the power. And it's like, he's never been the same since then. Yeah. And he does have a little more power, but at what cost? At what sacrifice? So here we go again. It's like, I don't know who to blame for this. Maybe we just blame the player, but he's sort of in between. I mean, he's not a power hitter, but he's not this work the count, draw walks, get on base. If you get a pitch, you can drive, do it. He's not that guy anymore either. I don't know what he is anymore. He's a good player. I'm not going to trash him, but he could be better because we've seen it. And he did greatly modify his approach, which is troubling to me.
Yeah. And I was looking at some of his numbers on Savant while you were going through that. And even though there's like a higher ISO power, right, which is slugging minus average, his slugging percentage has actually gone down year over year, which is such a bummer, like trying to hit for more power, yet you're not slugging because you're not hitting for average enough. He's seeing less pitches, which is also crazy. His rookie year, he saw like 4.5 pitches per at bat, which is like up there with some of the most patient, most disciplined hitters in the game. And that's dropped significantly each of the last 2 years. Notably, though, his strikeout rate has dropped, which is kind of weird, but his walk rate's also gone down with that, right? So his walk rate's half of what it was. He was in the 93rd percentile as a rookie. Now he's in the 32nd percentile. So that's a huge drop off. And that's probably why you're seeing such a giant drop off in his on base percentage.
It's like he's crushing him. He doesn't really have an identity as a hitter now. He had a very clear identity in 2022. And it was one that was very, very appealing, and I don't know, I looked at him as a guy who could be a really good leadoff hitter for a long time. Maybe not in the classic sense of stealing. People get obsessed with stolen bases for your leadoff guy. I don't. But yeah, he wasn't going to be that kind of guy, but just get on base, man. Set up your teammates, make these pitchers work, tire them out a little bit. Then they got to face the bulk of your order. I don't know. He frustrates me, and I really, really like him, but he frustrates me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Andrew, which of the young hitters have disappointed you the most this year?
I mean, I think it has to be Nolan Gorman, right? Yeah. Because you saw what he did last season, and he was like, remove that horrible June, and he was pacing like a OPS over 800, 35 plus homers if he hadn't gotten hurt. And I think the homers were like kind of there. Like he was like 20, 21 through the games that he played, but like everything else was just gone. Like he was striking out at a historically high rate. And it just seems like his approach was completely different. He wasn't chasing the high fastball at all last year, and it seems like this year he's kind of gone back to that a little bit. And I don't know what it was, but like last year, at least you had Nolan Gorman as like a really fun young bat off the with just a horrible rest of your team. But like this year, it seems like the entire team is kind of mediocre, and Nolan Gorman's just completely fallen off, which is really frustrating because I was really excited for him to be in the middle of the lineup, and he was batting 8th towards the end of his stint. And it seems like he might be figuring some of that up in AAA, but
yeah, his strikeout rate at Memphis is really good as far as, being way down. And I know it's AAA pitching, but he seems like mentally, at least he's reset, which is a good sign because that's where it starts. But he was a guy that, and I got obsessed a little bit, although in all honesty, I haven't checked it for a couple of weeks, but he was a guy that, along with Goldie, but Goldie's always taken a lot of called strikes, so I get it. But Gorman took so many called strikes and then just was one of the worst hitters in baseball, swinging his stuff out of the zone. I mean, he was just all screwed up. And you would think in his third year, like I think we all had a lot of patience and a real high tolerance level for the fact that, listen, he's a big power guy. There's going to be holes in his swing. There's going to be 2 weeks or whatever where he's just going to look awful, and then he'll come out of it. And I think we all were willing to make that trade-off. I think we all were very, very supportive of him and also excited by what he could do. Yeah. So yeah, this year was over the cliff, and I did not anticipate that. Nothing this extreme anyway.
Yeah, and it's not talked about enough that Nolan Gorman last year took some steps forward as a defender. So if you remember in 2022, he was terrible at second base. And we kind of wondered, are they going to be able to do this? But the Cardinals development system, they got with him. They worked together over the offseason. He was a league average defender last year, and he's regressed again this year. -6 outs above average, which is just, almost bottom of the barrel.
It is.
His range is awful. He's got a weak arm, even for a second baseman, which that's bad. So just terrible season for Nolan Gorman. I was going to play a fun game called Nolan Gorman or Joey Gallo, but you honestly can't tell the difference. Their savant pages look the exact same. Similar strikeout rate. It's horrible.
He reminds me of, this is really a cheap shot, low blow, whatever. He kind of reminds me of Chris Davis after the Orioles gave him that huge contract. And, I grew up in that town, and my brother's a huge Orioles fan. A lot of my friends are, and they all wanted to just kidnap Chris Davis and dump him into the Chesapeake Bay. They were just so, he was so bad. They didn't really want to do that, but they were so bad. He was so bad. And I look at that. I used to laugh go to Fangraphs and Statcast and just laugh at just how awful Chris Davis was. Well, it's a bit of a low blow, but Nolan Gorman's hanging with Chris Davis is I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, I'm pulling up Chris Davis's page right now, and the numbers are eerily similar.
Well, I'm glad you actually did that, because I thought, well, maybe I'm exaggerating it, and I guess I'm not. It's scary.
Bad. Well, they've got
maybe Nolan Gorman will give us a 50 homer season next year.
Yeah, well, he's just got to make contact more often. That's the problem. Like the Nolan Gorman conundrum, right, is that when he puts the ball in play, he's awesome. He's got 97th percentile barrel percentage. So he barrels it up almost 17% of the time. Those almost always land for extra base hits. His sweet spot percentage, 40%. He's hitting the ball in the sweet spot of the bat 40% of the time. Wow. He's got good bat speed. His expected numbers are okay, but he's just not making contact. Nolan Gorman on balls in play, top 4% of the league in expected slug, expected WOBA, but he's just not hitting the ball. And that's the problem. He's got first percentile whiff rate. It's just terrible. He's whiffing 38.7% of the time, which is actually higher than Chris Davis's whiff rate in his final season.
Oh man. That's depressing. And my friend, longtime friend and a really great analyst, and he's cranky, which makes him even more lovable, Joe Sheehan, in his newsletter, he was basically telling people, one guy I'm going to jump on. I'm not going to say when, but I'm going to draft Nolan Gorman because he cited what you did, Sandy. Even just coming into the season, like the hitting metrics in terms of contact and what he does with his contact, so he said, look, 27 home runs, 478 slug last year. Really sweet contact stuff. This is a guy to jump on for your fantasy team. And you know what? He was right. Like what he was basing that on was right. What a weird season when you bring that, we compare, like you talk about extremes, right? It's just amazing that so many good things in there, but they don't come to the surface enough because it's so much whiff. It's so much swinging at stuff out of the zone. And, what are the chances though he can get fixed and stay there for a while? That's what I don't understand. Does he become a trade piece? And that, boy, would they be taking a huge risk there, right?
Yeah.
Can you imagine if they trade him and, it's kind of a repeat of what we have seen. No, I'm not even going to mention the names, just what we have seen in recent seasons. Can you imagine? Oh, boy, the Mariners love him. He's got 40 home runs, the big fella, and all that stuff. I mean, name a team. I just threw them in there randomly.
Yeah, Andrew, tell us about what that would look like.
Yeah, that would be tough. I mean, we're seeing that with Tommy Edman a little bit. People are freaking out over some of that this week, and it was just a 2-game sample size. But man,
yeah,
I'm glad it came against the Cubs. That's all I have to say.
There you go. And at least Dylan Carlson faded out, so the Cardinals don't have to hear about that too much anymore.
Thank
but
goodness.
It's been crazy. And I'm being really random, so I apologize.
No worries.
The whole Tyler ONeal thing. I mean, I get a lot of people taunting me and others, and just hey, Bernie, did you see what Tyler ONeal's doing in Boston? I'm not surprised by what he's doing in Boston. I'm not surprised at all. We all knew that was there. We all knew that for a bunch of reasons he really hit a dead end here. And we all know that he really did need to go somewhere else and reset. I don't know that I expected this good of a power season from him, but it's not like, well, the Cardinals were idiots for trading him. No, the Cardinals were quote idiots because they got frustrated with him. They didn't really know what to do to get him gone, and a lot of it was him, Tio himself, because he was just so frequently injured. And it's just really hard to maintain any consistency. And that arbitration case he lost to the Cardinals, Scott Boras' agent primed him for war. It's like, no, we're gonna take them to war. We're gonna win this thing. See what they're doing to you. And it kind of messed up his head. And that was after his really big season where he was a legitimately exciting talent.
Yeah.
But he goes into 2022. And he's all kind of messed up. It just went downhill from there. So I don't know what to say. I wish the Cardinals would have gotten more for him, but what was his trade value really at that point, right?
Probably about what they got.
Yeah.
I mean, you kind of wish it worked out better with Robertson, but I remember when he came over, the reaction was a lot of like, well, that's all. And then people were like, well, he's an interesting arm. He's got a chance to be part of the bullpen. And he got hurt and had kind of a weird time with the Cardinals. Ended up getting released after I think like 12 professional innings. But yeah, I mean, I'm not sure there was any more, right? Because what ONeal was coming off of was literally just won't get on the field. And I think part of it is like, you shouldn't play through an injury. We've addressed this a few times before, but like, don't play through a real injury. But like, if you've got calf soreness and your team needs you out there, like sometimes you got to be out there. And It seemed like Tyler ONeal didn't want to play when he hurt, just like, not just when he's injured, but it felt, and I can't speak to that. I'm not there every day, obviously, but that's kind of how it felt on the outside. And I think fans were frustrated. I think the team was frustrated. And I think other teams can use that. You can say, well, look, you've publicly called this player out. You obviously don't know what to do with him, and we're not going to give you any more. I mean, they traded Chris Sale for like Vaughn Grissom or something like that, right? Like Chris Sale didn't have that much trade value, yet he had more than Tyler ONeal. Right. So,
yeah, and never underestimate the power of the walk year. I think that gets overstated by. I don't know what I am. I'm kind of traditional media still. I'm kind of everywhere, but that's one of those old saws about, well, walk year. These guys are all they all turn it on. I don't know if it's really that. T.O. is guilty, is charged on that, but it is his walk year, and he does have Scott Boras pumping him up, and he did get sent to a place where he could start fresh. So it's like the perfect storm that combined for him to do this. I got nothing against the guy, but I can't really condemn the Cardinals in terms of just trading him, because one thing I is everybody wanted him out of here. Not everybody, but I'm talking about fans that, there's a really large consensus. Yeah, it's just not going to happen here for him. So now I think it's kind of unfair to go back and say, see, they screwed up again or whatever. I play that game too. I'm guilty of it. So shame on me, but whatever. Anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Before we get into that, we wanted to take a moment to thank one of our sponsors, 314 Sports Cards and Collectibles. 314 Sports Cards is located at 9640 Olive Boulevard in Olivet and is open 10 to 5 Monday through Friday and 9 to 4 on Saturdays. If you're interested in trading cards, 314 buys, sells, and trades sports cards and Pokemon cards as well. They have the newest selection of packs, boxes, and single-player cards of local players and stars from around the league. So maybe when Nolan Gorman gets traded, you can find some Nolan Gorman rookie cards on discount, and they'll hold a lot of their value once he pops off with the Red Sox. So, yeah, thanks, 314. Appreciate it.
A Nolan Gorman trade would just be so devastating because, it seems the Cardinals, for some reason, get dragged through the mud on this more than other teams, because every team has a list of players that they wish they hadn't traded. And I mean, you can go all the way back to Brock for Broglio, right? Everybody has these types of trades they make, and 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 20 years later with the Carlton trade for the Cardinals, right? Even now we look back, we're like, how do they do that? You look back at this and it's it's horrible. I can't believe we made that move. But the Cardinals in recent years, even when it's not that big a deal, like Dylan Carlson having one good week with the Rays, and people are texting me about it. They're like, I can't believe the Cardinals are this bad again. It just, they've gotten absolutely punished for it. And so you already know Nolan Gorman would go put up 40 home runs for somebody. It'd be terrible. He'd have some big playoff moment, be the hero for the San Francisco Giants or something. And it would just,
I know.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the Cardinals get targeted because the Dodgers gave up Yordan Alvarez, but they have all this young talent that they developed themselves, and the Cardinals don't. So
yeah, I mean, when you win, it fixes that, I guess.
Yeah,
and the Cardinals have
it
only
does.
done a little bit of winning for the last decade. So
yeah,
it's horrible. Well, to round out the young bats conversation, I don't think it'd be complete without addressing Lars Nootbaar, who has had a year of ups and downs. The expected metrics, as always, are fantastic for Lars, right? He's a StatCast darling. That's what they say. And when he's been on the field and when he's made contact and, when he hasn't been incredibly unlucky, he's been awesome. But there's a really big drop off between his expected stats and his actual stats. He's got a high walk rate. His strikeout rate is right around the lowest of his career. His hard hit rate's the highest of his career. And yet it feels like the actual production is not as good as it was in years past. And it's definitely not as good as it should.
I'll counter that because he has an 85 OPS over his last 30 games, and he's been pretty everyone. We got a question in our Q&A last week, which is why are we playing Lars Nootbaar over Michael Tiani? I was like, what? Have you looked at his numbers over the last 30 games? They're really good. So
yeah, but on the whole, on the season, even though the expected stats are so good, because he had a terrible stretch before that. He had all of August or early August and late July was awful. Do you guys know why that's happening? I honestly can't figure it out.
There's two things about him. I know that there are some fans and some media that hate to hear, poor batted ball luck, but Nootbaar absolutely,
yeah.
If you want to call him a victim, there is no question he has had a really bad luck season. I'm going to generalize here, and believe me, I actually studied this and backed it up at the time. I can't recall those numbers in my head because it was a while back, but and this is no big breakthrough in terms of learning something, but he's had all these injuries, and the thing of it is, it's just, okay, he comes back and it takes him a while to get going. And when he has played, I did a study where it's okay, he's been healthy and he's been in a lineup for X number of games in a month, or, if you over a 3-week period, X number of games, his performance really starts to click in. He's had so many interruptions, and he's such a timing guy, a rhythm and timing guy, that when he comes back, whatever good spot that he was in, it takes him a while to kind of climb back up that hill. And that's where the injuries, it isn't just the injuries themselves, it's the after effect of the injuries. So that's kind of my theory on Nootbaar. He's a very talented guy. And You would think at some point his luck would change, but there's no doubt this year that's a factor. And I'm not going to like ignore it because people don't want to hear it. I mean, it happens to be totally true. So,
yeah, it's just brutal. He can't stay healthy. And it's one of those things that every time it happens, it's weird injuries with Lars too. And I think that's worth pointing out. There are guys like ONeal. We were talking about his injury history. They're just like nagging things that last forever. Lars Nootbaar, it's like, yeah, he laid out for a ball in the outfield and broke a rib. You know, it's just weird stuff like that. Or he got a thumb injury diving into second base, I remember. And it's, you know, you can't really do anything about those. That's something that it just happens. You know, it's not like he's not preparing well. It's not like he's pulling a hamstring for the 4th time in a season. And it's like, you need to change your routine. You can't do anything about the Lars injuries. And I think
I agree. I'm sorry. He works really hard.
Yeah,
I mean, he does. I never questioned that. So, yeah, I don't know, man. They're going to need a couple of those guys for them to turn this offense around. You know, and this is with the premise that they're not going to make any big, huge moves to add offense. Maybe they'll surprise us, but I think Nootbaar is a source of hope. I really do. I don't know what to say about Walker and Gorman. I would love to believe that, but you know, even Jordan Walker, and you know, he had that 5-hit day at Yankee Stadium on a Sunday, September 1st. And since then, he's like 5 for 34 and 32% strikeout rate. Yeah, he's shown some power here lately. I like that. But man, he's just has so much work to do. You know, he closed out last year. Go look at his last 30 games of the season. Just phenomenal numbers.
That's awesome.
And I don't, you know, I think I would say. And when I was doing my radio show, I would say this and people would think I was calling him like childish or something. Not at all. But every player has their own maturity level as players, as hitters.
Yeah.
Like Mason Wynn is really advanced for his age. Walker just seems to me like when things start to go bad, he has a hard time handling and it just gets worse. It snowballs, to use the word you used earlier. And like in terms of his maturity as a baseball hitter to handle these things, you know, I think he's more vulnerable than, for example, like a Mason Wynn. I think that's obvious.
Yeah.
And hopefully that baseball, not life maturity, that baseball maturity will kick in 2024. The Cardinals have to hope so. And they got to find a way to help him. I don't know. I can't be more specific about what, but they're going to have to find a way to help him. And I assume they're going to have, I don't know what's going to become of the manager, but there is no way, and you know what, they're going to come back with the same staff in the dugout, guys who are hitting coach. They got like 3 of them. There's just no way they can continue.
So.
They have to change it up to give these guys, if nothing else, fresh voices, fresh ideas, fresh things to work on. Here's what you do. And they also got to get up to date with the technology. I mean, they've lagged as an organization behind that, and there's no excuse for that. You know, I'm actually really understandable about their payroll. I don't obsess over their payroll. They're spending enough money to be having much better seasons than they are.
True.
They don't spend money on infrastructure. They have really slacked off. I mean, the number of coaches in the system, the number of instructors in the system, like Katie Wu had a note, like Victor Scott, there's no roving outfield instructor in the minor leagues. And, you know, so that's why he was getting extra help from Willie McGee. I mean, how can that be? Seriously, how in the world is that even possible? So I'm much more upset when it comes to the criticism of Bill DeWitt. I'm much more upset with stuff like that than just looking at payroll size and where they rank, because they don't spend their money well anyway. So why would you want them to throw more of it away? The thing that made them great for a long time, player development, instruction, having the best teachers down there, you know, getting players ready for the majors, working with them to kind of fix what's wrong. And they had every edge that you would want to have to help those kind of players. And now I can't sit here and quantify it, but they have to be among the worst organizations in the major leagues at those type of things. And that used to be a profound strength of the St. Louis Cardinals. And that's gone. And that's really depressing because it didn't have to happen. And we're not talking about a fortune. We're not talking about, spending amazing sums of money to get this right. That should have never happened. It's very upsetting.
Yeah, I honestly couldn't agree more. We got one of those questions in our Q&A the other day that we addressed. And it's crazy. Like they don't have a pitching lab right now. I don't know how you don't have that. How many
Oh.
other organizations have it and it's working? If you see the Rays bringing these guys out of nowhere with a pitching lab, why are you not building one? And why have we waited so long?
I don't think they have a batting lab either.
They
Do
don't.
they?
No.
No.
Yeah, because someone who would know, one of my sources down there, was just shaking his head, saying, "Dude, you have no idea. There's like nothing." And I'm like, "What are you talking about? There's just nothing. We're not helping these kids down there at all." And
No.
and it's just he said, I'm not kidding. He says it's sad. It's like really sad. And so no wonder they come up here, and then as soon as something goes wrong, it's kind of like, oh, what do I do? It's like they don't have that foundation. And that, to me, that stuff is inexcusable. I mean, I'll let everyone else stew about whether their payroll should be 10 or 12 or $15 million higher. With this regime in place, it doesn't matter. Okay.
Yeah.
And they've got to rebuild their infrastructure, and they got to start. The thing Bill DeWitt did when he made the master stroke of genius to bring Jeff Luhnow in, and I was in the middle of that talking to Bill DeWitt because people didn't understand it. I knew exactly, because he explained it like in great detail, like what his vision was. And he believed we have to have a more efficient payroll system. We need payroll efficiency. We develop our own, and then we can go out and supplement it with big showy moves from the outside. And that's exactly what they did. Why he got away from that, it's one of those riddles that I just can't answer. It's just bizarre. The guy that was like at the forefront of this among owners, he was way ahead of the industry. Then just kind of like now they're behind most teams in the industry. The very same things that Bill DeWitt wanted, and he espoused, and he put into motion by bringing in Luhnow, right?
Yeah.
Where's the disconnect there? I don't understand how you get to where you were then and then where you are now. I'm sorry, I'm making speeches today. My apologies.
No, you just brought something to mind here. I was thinking about the Mikolas extension, right? Like that's a deal that a team with respectable analytics department and just baseball people that know what they're doing, they probably don't sign that extension. And you think about the Dodgers, who had Tyler Anderson coming off of like a really good season, but a lot of us said that's some smoke and mirrors. They didn't re-sign him. They let him walk. And the Cardinals did not see that. That's the type of thing that like this organization is obviously behind. And you look at their rotation, and we're going to get into the pitching side to, kind of diagnose what went wrong here, because there's plenty to talk about there as well. But the big theme, and we've talked about it ad nauseum over the last month and a half, is that the Cardinals spend money on bad pitching. You can get bad pitching for free. And that's what I don't think they understand, right? Like Michael McGreevy, Kloffenstein, these guys could be free, and they could be doing the same thing that Miles Mikolas is doing for $20 million right now.
That's
like
really smart.
Bad pitching should be free. You should not pay somebody to go out there and put up a 5.5 ERA for the season. Like that's what makes bad teams bad. That's why the Nationals stink right now. Yeah, they won a World Series, but they stink because they're paying Steven Strasburg and they're paying Patrick Corbin to be awful. The Cardinals are doing the exact same thing, and that's why the pitching staff just stinks. And so we're going to get into that now, talk about what went wrong on the pitching side. But I think you're absolutely right. The first thing is they don't know how to spend their money.
Yeah, can I have a quick aside? And this is related because it's related to pitching. I've been getting a lot of stuff from feedback, and I appreciate that people reach out to me, but a lot of stuff, the YouTube channel and whatnot, is just like, I don't want to hear about this Heim Bloom. What did Tampa Bay ever? They ever win a World Series? That kind of thing. And it's like, I understand there's this kind of rage against the machine mentality. I get it, but it's like, you got to look into Heim Bloom's background. Okay, we've spent a good part of this stream talking about where they've gone wrong, like terrible spending, and but also more than that, the one thing, they have to get their foundation back, which is drafting and player development and instruction and identifying talent and specifically pitching, more so, because that used to really be their strength. Heim Bloom, everything that we just talked about, how their minor league system has fallen apart, just fallen apart. That's like the ideal guy to fix that. And then I don't want to hear from people, well, he should be the director of player development. No. He's a big picture guy. But the things that the Cardinals need fixed the most, that happens to be his areas of specialty. And that's why he's a really good fit. I mean, to even bring up that they never won a World Series, I mean, come on. The fact that they got to a couple World Series is like not exactly the miracle on ice, but it's a miracle, you know?
Yeah.
So people want to lash out at everybody. Any idea, you know, because I think we all agree Chaim Bloom would be really good for the Cardinals. He matches their needs. He could strengthen where they've gone wrong. But you try to talk about that, and then it just comes to like payroll. They're cheap. They don't want to spend money. Whatever. You can't talk any sense into it. And I know people are frustrated. So I'm sorry that I get frustrated with it as well, but for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, no.
Anyway, go ahead.
I get it.
I'll shut up for a while.
Well, Andrew and I have talked about this, and Andrew, I'll kick it to you in a second, but
Yeah.
you look at the $40 million they spent combined. I just put this in the chat, but they spent $40 million total on Lynn, Gibson, and Mikolas. Those guys this year are probably going to end up giving the Cardinals somewhere around 500 innings. So solid volume. But they're going to do it with a cumulative ERA of like 4.7 or something like that, which is bad. Like that's a run every other inning. That's bad. That loses you games. You don't win with guys like that. That money, $40 million, pays for a true ace, like a Garrett Cole level arm and 2 ARB guys. Like that's how a good team spends their money. They spend their money by developing guys that are cheap, that can get the job done, right? So you definitely have pitchers in the system that could put Miles Mikolas performances out there. I don't believe that Michael McGreevy couldn't go out there and have a 5.5 ERA. Maybe he wouldn't give you as many innings as Mikolas right now, but honestly, the only thing we've seen from him was pretty encouraging. I just don't believe that as an organization, you can't find a guy to do that. And if you can't,
totally agree.
It's a huge indictment on your development. And we've complained about the Cardinals' development plenty. But I mean, that's what it is. And then what you do is you take all of the money that you saved, the $40 million that you didn't spend on 3 pitchers, and you put it into 1 pitcher, and you have money left over. Like that's how smart teams spend their money. And it's not how the Cardinals spend their money. So I don't know.
Yeah,
Andrew,
I agree.
you've been a critic of the pitching. Tell us about what's been most frustrating to you.
I mean, it's just so bad with like Miles Mikolas, and like you keep running him out there. Like he had a decent start today, but like that doesn't like sometimes bad pitchers have good starts, right? It's not like Michael McGreevy hasn't had good. He had a great start in his major league debut, and I don't know if the Cardinals would spend on Garrett Cole because they've shied away from guys like that historically.
Sure.
That's probably the one
that's
area
like
of spending I would criticize the ownership on. Right.
Yeah.
But like I don't think they would necessarily spend at the top of the market, but it gives them more payroll flexibility to maybe go out and get that big bat that they need right now. So I mean, it's just so bad that you're spending this much money on guys that are basically giving you what almost every other organization can just get from their AAA arms, right? And like last year, they tried that with like Jake Woodford. And even though I'd rather have Jake Woodford up with the bases loaded than Paul Goldschmidt, I mean, he's just a horrible pitcher. And like, it's just was one of the worst in the entire league as a starting pitcher last year. So
I thought it was good, Andrew, that they gave Drew Rom 9 starts or whatever it was. He wasn't very good, but why not put him in there? I mean, the point is, it's like that experience should help him. Unfortunately, he got hurt, but that's the kind of stuff that you guys are talking about. Like Drew Rom, that actually is a good example of what we're talking about. The results weren't great, but that's also irrelevant in a season where the season's gone anyway, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, hopefully now in the like week and a half they have left of the season, they don't start Mikolas again, right? Because the season's gone. Like they're a game under 500 now. I think they're like 7 games out with like 15 to play.
Yeah, it's over. Like
there's just no way that it's going to happen. I think they have to win out, and then the Braves and the Mets both have to be under 500.
Even the Cubs would have to collapse too. Yeah. 3 teams would have to collapse.
So, I mean, it's just not possible. So if they're starting at Mikolas again, then they're just either delusional or they just don't know what they're doing. So,
well, they'll earn a lot of credibility with me, and I think a lot of other people if they just DFA Mikolas and just eat the bad money. I don't see how you can run this back again next season. He's not going to get any better. He's going to be a year older. The last time I looked, he had either had the worst or the second worst strikeout rate and swing and miss rate among major league starters. And it's not going to improve. It's actually going to continue to get worse. And he's been really bad for 2 years. And yet to your guys' point. Yet there are some people they will have at AAA now and certainly next year that they could easily put in the back of the rotation, and they won't do it because they're stubborn. It's, well, we're paying him. That's what we're paying him to pay. What you paying him to undermine your attempts to win? What's the value there? Eat the contract. I don't think they will. Maybe I'll be stunningly surprised by this. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been one of Miles's big quasi supporters this year. At times, I've said it's passable because there was a stretch, especially when the Cardinals were playing well. Miklasz was going out there and delivering a quality start most of the time. And I say, not all 5 ERAs are created the same. So if you're going out there and you've got an ERA around 5, but that's because you go 6 innings and give up 3 runs most of the time you're out there, that's fine. You put your team in a position to win. And Miles did that for a good portion of the season. But then he went to this, where one start, it's 5 innings and 3 runs. And then the next start, it's 2 innings and 8 runs. And he's still generating similar stats, I guess, but with less volume, and they never are in a position to win. And that's the problem now. Either he's not going length, right? So he's not resting your bullpen or providing the inning bulk that you want. You want him to eat innings, or he's just imploding. And it's you can't have that. And so it's just been worse and worse. I don't see why they couldn't trade Miles Mikolas if they're willing to eat a lot of the contract. Because I think his market value right now, if he was a free agent, I think he would get a deal with a team. I don't know if it would be he definitely wouldn't get more than 1 year, which is why it's nice that he's only signed for a year. But if the Cardinals ate I don't know, $12 million, that might be about his market value,
right.
$5 to $6 million. So maybe you could trade him for nothing.
I agree. They did that when they moved Mike Leake to Seattle, and they can do it again. Because I agree with you, for all his flaws and the lack of swing and miss, he doesn't miss bats and all that. He still can give you bulk innings, and I think there are teams that would be willing to pay for that, right?
100%. And he doesn't walk anybody.
Right. It's a good point. Yeah. So there is something there, but they would have to eat a lot of it. So maybe they don't have to eat all of it. Maybe they can salvage it and with a Mike Leake type maneuver, which is not ideal, but at least you get a lot of that off your own books, so.
Yeah. Well, we can talk about the newest Cardinal starter, Eric Fetty. Andrew, I've told you, sometimes I forget he exists.
Yeah.
It just is the least notable performances. It's 5 innings, 2 runs. Didn't even know he pitched today. Andrew, tell me about your feelings about Fetty going into next year.
I think it's fine. I think he's just like every other mediocre Cardinal starting pitcher going forward, right? And that's what makes it so unappealing, I guess, for Cardinal fans. It's just more of the same. And I feel like he's on the better end of that, more of the same. He's probably one of the higher end guys that can get out of that stereotypical 35-year-old starter who's gets ground balls, and you know how it goes. But I feel like it's better than for the value they're getting. I think he's only being paid $7 or $8 million next year.
Right.
And the White Sox are eating $1 million of that, which is crazy. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's fine to have him in the rotation. There's just a logjam of these pitchers that are all kind of the same build, right?
Very true.
Fetty and Gibson and Lynn, Mikolas, Mats are all kind of similar, within that same tier of star. Obviously, some of them are better than others, and Sonny Gray's kind of maybe the best of all of those. Maybe I don't know. I feel like he's kind of in his own category. It's a little bit unfair to put him in that group, but it is kind of similar. I just want some chances for some of the young guys to start and develop and break out. And I know that people are going to get hurt, and that's just how pitching tends to go. But honestly, the Cardinals have gotten really lucky this year with rotation injuries. Other than Sonny Gray being out for 2 weeks to start the season, they really haven't suffered any big injuries, right? Because Lance Lynn missed a big portion of the second half, but you had Fetty there, you had Palante there to cover that, and it wasn't really they're basically, as we said, all kind of the same guy. So I just want to see a couple of these, maybe move Fetty this offseason for something, and then give McGreevy or Graceffo or whoever a chance to at least make the rotation. Because as of right now, if you pick up Gibson's option, which I think they're going to do, I don't really think there's a way around that at this point, as much as I wish for them not to. You have a rotation next year with Gray, Fetty, Palante, I think has earned a spot. And then Gibson, and
Don't forget Steven
Mikolas
Matz. He'll be here.
like one of
He'll
those
be
two.
here.
And at that point, you have like 6 starters, and then like you don't really have another spot to give anybody.
Correct.
You
So
don't have
you're
a
gonna-
strong number 2. Yeah. If we agree that if just to put a number on it, if Gray's considered a number 1, that
Fetty's
who's the number 2? You know,
Yeah,
nobody. They're all basically number 3 to number 5 pitchers.
Right. And I think he's been, needless to say, underwhelming. But I'm reserving judgment because I don't. Maybe I'm being naive. I think he'll be better. At least there's a good chance he'll be better next season, which does not turn him into Garrett Cole, of course. But I think he's capable of doing a good job. So we'll see. But underwhelming is my word for what we've seen from him. He's not terrible. He's not good. Just underwhelming.
I mean, I certainly would rather have Tommy Edman right now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's more because that like I don't really want another Fetty on the roster, right? Like you don't need more of that. And Tommy Edman plays a great center field, and you know he can own my favorite Japanese pitcher, who I said was going to be terrible this start of the year. So
just a lot of redundancy. What do you think? Can I real quick throw that out there since we brought up center field? How do you guys see center field going next season? I mean, again, there's always a chance they bring someone in. I don't know, but with what they have, how do we see that?
Well, I think to start the year, it's going to be Victor Scott's job. He's been good enough down the stretch. But I mean, I still think I would say he's probably not major league ready at the plate yet. The defense has been better, which is great because that's his calling card. That's going to be where he generates his value. And the defense was underwhelming in his first stint here. He just wasn't ready, which is crazy because he looked so great in the minors. But we have access to more data and stuff up here. And so we could see, okay, there are some holes in his game. And it's been better. It's not Ciani level right now, but it'll progress. He might not ever be Michael Ciani in defense. I mean, who is? He was going to win a Gold Glove if he had enough innings. Probably.
No, he does have enough innings now.
Officially,
I think they changed somebody found that he does have eligibility to win. I think Katie Wu tweeted that out.
Oh, that's great. Because I was worried that he wasn't going to have it. I saw he was like 2 innings short or something. Regardless, though, I think it'll be his job to lose. I think the Cardinals see him as the long-term guy. I don't know how I feel about that though, because it was Victor Scott's job at the beginning of this year, and it was a train wreck. And so the Cardinals had to go to. I mean, would you say at that point Ciani was like the 4th or 5th option behind like I think they wanted it to be
behind Edman and then
Carlson
and
Nootbaar. They gave Nootbaar a little bit of run. They gave Scott run, and then finally it's like, okay, I guess Ciani. Yeah. But I still don't see them bringing anyone in either. I don't know.
And a lot of this again, and this is the big, huge, massive gray area. We don't know who's going to be making the decisions. We don't know who the manager is going to be. So I love when you're getting to the end of a very disappointing season and you really want to get fired up about looking ahead. And people ask us all questions, and I'm glad they do because we're all interested in what's coming next. And so many times I find myself answering a question, not blowing it off at all, but just saying like, I don't know what to tell you because I don't know who's going to be making the decision in the front office. And I don't know who's going to be the manager. And I don't know if they're going to have, kind of the same coaching staff back. So it's hard to really say, well, I think this is what they'll do. How do we know really? It's, I hope there's clarity soon after the end of the regular season though. They just can't let this thing drift and drift and drift because people are ready for change. They're demanding change and they deserve change. We all do. And the Cardinals do. So this is going to be one of the, I've covered this team for a long time. I mean, even going back to 1985, helping Rick Hummel out on the beat. This is the biggest offseason the Cardinals will have had since the offseason that resulted in Bill DeWitt and his partners buying the Cardinals 1996. To me, the one that's coming will be the biggest offseason, the second biggest offseason they've had in the last well, you go back to Whitey Herzog when they brought him in. That wasn't in the offseason, but it's the same thing. We're just a franchise-changing, redefining move. This one has got to be kind of like that. It's going to be the stakes are huge for the Cardinals on the field, and also business-wise. The stakes are huge.
Yeah, I think for the first time at least in my lifetime as a baseball fan, the Cardinals have to admit that they have no direction right now. Like at the end of last season, they were able to kind of say, okay, it was a weird year. All these things went wrong. We had injuries, we had down years from guys, but look, we're back. The projections like us next year. We're going to have a winning season. So just bear with us, and people, I think were willing to buy it for a little bit.
Sure.
But at the end of this year, like the Cardinals didn't play a meaningful game in September. I know technically they still had like 5% playoff odds at the beginning of the month. Sorry, to put it frankly, that's stupid. They were out. They were out of it on September 1st. And they can't say that again. They're out of runway. And I think you're absolutely right. Like they have to admit, okay, we have to do some big things here. So if you had to put your money on it, do you think Ali Marmol is in the dugout on opening day?
Well, here I go again. I don't know who's making the decision. Like, if in other words, if they're going to actually do something that, from a business standpoint, would be so damaging that they leave Mozeliak in charge, final decision, all that stuff, and Chaim Bloom will take over after Mo is done in 25. If they do that, I think there's a better chance that Marmol keeps the job with Mozeliak, and if they move Chaim Bloom into the big chair like now, well, after the season with Mo in the background, I don't care if he's in the background, as long as he's not making the decision, as long as they turn it over to Bloom. Mo's a good sounding board for things. He can be of some service. People are freaking out about that. Like, they want him like basically, to move to Taiwan or something, it's just like, so, but no, I would think, listen, I would hope that if Bloom gets the keys to drive this thing and it's his car, I would hope he would have an idea about a different manager, and I would hope that he would have the freedom to choose his own manager.
Yeah.
If not, why would he even take the job, really?
Yeah, that's true.
And I got mixed feelings about Ali. Somehow I've been called some kind of apologist for. I'm not. I've never said, oh, they got to bring him back. I've never said, oh, he's a great manager. But there's some things about him that I like. There's some things about him that frustrate me. But I think they can do better. And that doesn't mean he's the worst manager in the history of professional baseball. They can do better, though. And now there's a big debate about, well, do they need to bring in a, quote, proven winner? And, there's a big hang up out there. It's like, well, I don't want any more of these first-time managers. You look around baseball right now and some of the best teams out there. Look at the American League Central, for example.
Yeah.
All the guys that are all jockeying for the play, they're all first-time managers, So everybody, there's no box. There's no formula for this. They hired Kevin Cash in Tampa Bay when Chaim Bloom was there. Kevin Cash is a hell of a manager, operating with a very limited payroll. He made a huge mistake in the postseason, arguably. But anyway, I don't want to ramble about that. But I don't know what you guys. We have time, but I don't know what you think about Ali. I mean, I don't. It's a tough situation. I've told Ali this. I've actually told him this. I said, look, you're never really going to get any kind of fair shake here. All right. People hate you because they hate Mozeliak. And he laughed. I said, no, unfortunately, I'm serious, but I'm giving it to you straight. That's just the spot that you're in. And I understand why people associate him with Mozeliak and why that causes them to just get all of them out of there. I do get that emotion, but he's in a tough spot. I think he's almost in a spot where he can't win as far as just having people like him, that part of the job.
Yeah, he definitely finds himself in some weird catch-22s. Like with Tyler O'Neill, it's like it feels like when he doesn't call a player out when something bad is happening, people are like, "Oh my gosh, this manager doesn't care about winning. Like he's not going to take control of the clubhouse. He's too young, he's inexperienced." And then when Ali comes out and publicly says, "Yeah, Tyler O'Neill wasn't hustling. I'm upset about it. We're going to have a conversation." People are like, "Wow, he's so dramatic and he brings all this to the." And it's just ridiculous the way he's been treated by fans. I think it's a real bummer. I think there are a lot of good things that he does, but he doesn't get any credit when he does something right. And then when he does something wrong, they're all over him.
I can quantify and affirm and reaffirm and validate and all that stuff that they've had a very good bullpen this season.
Yeah.
And you don't check all those boxes in all those areas where they're really, really good. You don't check the boxes unless there was a manager who knew what he was doing with the bullpen.
Yep.
But I had a guy tell me the other day when I wrote something at Scoops Network. It just said, like, what are you crazy, Bernie? I like you, but this bullpen's terrible. It's a terminal illness on this team. It's like, oh my goodness. It's bad enough to watch the team, but then, you have to hear where it's just like everything's rotten, like nothing's any good. There are some things good. Like I love this bullpen this season, but I don't know, man. It's just going to be a tough spot for him going forward. And if Chaim Bloom keeps him, it's a tough spot because then that'll be the first. Let's say Chaim Bloom is in charge and he decides he's going to makes the announcement. Marmol's going to return. Well, guess how many percentage of Cardinals fans will immediately hate Chaim Bloom, right?
Yeah, everybody.
So, I mean, it might be best. It's not fair. It might be best to just reset, man, because the manager is just going to be doomed one way or the other. And then you don't want, if you're going to put Bloom in the big chair, you don't want him getting off to a start to where people immediately lose trust in him if he brings Marmol back. You know what I mean? What a bad spot they're in.
Yeah, guilty by association in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And it's the fact that, like, you talk about the bullpen, but just to put some numbers on here, like, obviously Ryan Helsley's going to be good, right? Like, he's talented. We love Ryan Helsley. But Ryan Fernandez, Rule 5 draft pick with a 3.18 ERA. He's been in positions where he can succeed all year long. Jojo Romero, a guy the Cardinals traded Edmundo Sosa for, has been fantastic. John King has a 2.64 ERA with the Cardinals in over 85 innings with the Cardinals. He is not a 2.64 ERA pitcher. That is not who John King is as a baseball player. But Ali Marmol specifically puts him in spots where he can succeed. Kyle Leahy, Chris Roycroft.
Libby.
These guys, Libby, when he's relieving, he's awesome.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even like Sean Armstrong had a couple good innings with the Cardinals before they let him go. Like, they have constantly put guys in places where they can be their best selves, at least with the bullpen. And they don't do that everywhere. I'll admit that, of course. The way they've managed some of these young bats, sending them up and bringing them down, it's just ridiculous.
I agree.
There, it's been great.
I have one metric that's my go-to for looking at a bullpen, and I can't even remember who taught me this. And I said, "Hey, it makes perfect sense now I think about it. It's win probability added," and it's a simple thing. It's not that complicated. It's either does this area of the team or does this pitcher or what do they enhance your chances of winning or do they hurt your chances of winning? It's just that simple. I looked again today to just double check. The Cardinals this year are 6th in WPA for their bullpen, 6th in the majors. And yet there's no shortage of people say this guy has no idea what he's doing. You're not that good if the guy doesn't know what he's doing. I think he's been brilliant at the way he's handled the bullpen. And every manager is going to have games where things blow up. But
for sure,
you look at the big body of work. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, for sure. They've been great with Ali in the bullpen. It's a bummer. And like you said, there are games that are bad. Like, if Ryan Helsley loses you a game, Ryan Helsley loses a game every once in a while. That doesn't mean it wasn't the right call to put him in,
right. Right. And he'll never live down, unfortunately, the Helsley game 1, the Philadelphia series, 9th inning, just being so slow. Listen, I blasted him pretty hard. I'm not going to be a phony and act like I didn't. But then again, that's 2 years ago. Okay. It was a big screw up. But then again, it would have helped if they would have, I don't know, scored a few runs. Right?
Yeah, especially in the next game. Well, Lars Nootbaar leads off with a double, and then you strand him on second because you go over 3 with runners in scoring position. But what do we know about that?
Yeah.
Poor
Ollie.
Shit, Dakota Hudson there, and maybe they would have got a hit.
It might have worked. It definitely would have worked against Toronto.
That's right.
Yeah, well, it's been a good discussion today. There's obviously a lot that went wrong. And I think we've done a good job of kind of answering that question by position group. Like Bernie has said here today, there are things about this team that really just stink. The offense, it's awful. The starting pitching leaves a lot to be desired, and it probably won't be any better next year. But it's okay to acknowledge that the bullpen this year has been good. It's okay to acknowledge that some of the staff has made some good decisions, and it's okay to acknowledge that there's a real big need for turnover. And I'm sure turnover is going to be a topic we address on basically every episode throughout this offseason, whether it's on the baseball side or on the operations side. I'm sure we'll see big, hopefully we'll see big executives changing roles or entering or leaving the organization. And hopefully we see the Cardinals make some big moves on the baseball side as well. But it's been a great episode of Dealing the Cards. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. Please remember on your way out, if you liked what you heard, please drop us a like, drop us a comment. We'd love to address it on our next Q&A. And we'll be live again on Wednesday. So thanks, everyone.
Bernie, anything you want to plug real quick?
No, just if you go to youtube.com /at Bernie Show, that's how you get to me. It's going really well, thanks to a certain person who's doing those thumbs for me. Can I point? How do I point to Andrew? So anyway, but no, it's been fun. I've really enjoyed doing it. I want to try to make them look better, but I'm a little challenged in that area. So, but no, thank you. And I've really enjoyed this. You guys do a great job. And anytime you want me on, just ask. So I'm happy
we can't thank you enough for hopping on with us today. It was an awesome conversation. It was great to speak with you.
I love you guys. No, and you do such great work. So thank you.
Well, thank you. All right. Well, we'll see you all next time on Dealing the Cards. Thanks, Bernie.